Welcome to Moscow. No, not the city, the Oblast. What? Yes, you heard me right. Moscow isn't just the name of the Russian capital, it's also the name of a separate province, of which we'll talk about today. Hello and welcome to 7 Facts. The Oblast of Moscow, also known as Podmoskovye, literally meaning under Moscow, is a federal subject separate from the actual city of Moscow. It's basically the province that surrounds the capital but having its own parliament and government. You might be inclined to think that this is a small place, but it's actually larger than Denmark. Granted, by Russian standards, that is small. There are also 7.5 million people living here, so it's a pretty densely packed place. In fact, it's the second most densely populated area of the largest country on Earth. Again, we are not talking about the capital of Russia, but a separate province, so to avoid any confusion, for the rest of the video I'll use the colloquial term, Podmoskovye. First, let's look a bit at the history of this province. For over 20,000 years, people have been living all around Podmoskovye. There have been countless tribes and cultures that came and went, but the last ones to inhabit this area before the formation of Moscow were the Marian and Meschera tribes, two Finno-Ugric nations. Starting from the 4th century AD, Slavs began to arrive here, but it was only in the 10th century that they settled for good in Podmoskovye and assimilated the locals. It was here that the Grand Duchy of Vladimir was created, the country that gradually evolved into the Grand Duchy of Moscow, the cradle of Russian culture and statehood. Much later, in 1812, one of the most important battles in Russian history took place in this province, the Battle of Borodino. This was basically the battle that decided the outcome of the French invasion of Russia. In this battle, some 350,000 soldiers met on the battlefield and about 85,000 of them were casualties. Napoleon did win and he did occupy Moscow, but the Russian scorched earth policies, attrition and guerrilla warfare meant that this victory was in actuality a defeat. Napoleon eventually retreated, but disease, hunger and hypothermia devastated the French army, leaving only 10,000 men alive by the time they reached the border. So yeah, Moscow Oblast holds a pretty important place in Russian history. Podmoskovye is a bit different from the other federal subjects, as in it doesn't have a capital city. Well, not an official one at least. While Moscow City did act as a de facto capital, right now the closest thing to an administrative center of the oblast is the city of Krasnogorsk. Actually, this is going to be the official center too. The local government, the regional court and the Duma, or parliament, are all located here. This city is fairly new, founded in 1932, but it does sit on the location of several villages, estates and factories, so people have been living here for a lot longer than 90 years. While there are some old buildings from previous eras in the city, most of Krasnogorsk has a typical 20th century Eastern European architecture, with more recent modern buildings introduced in the last decades. Krasnogorsk is not really a city of great beauty, for that you can go to Moscow, to which the city is linked via the subway by the way. It is however a city on the rise, with a successful economy. In the last 30 years, the population has practically doubled, so if nothing else, this might be a great place to invest. Ever heard of the Soyuz spacecraft? Guess where that's coming from? The Korolev Rocket and Space Corporation Energia is headquartered in the city of Korolev in Podmoskovye. This company is responsible for building ballistic missiles and components and parts for the International Space Station. They're also responsible for all operations involving human spaceflight on the Russian end and are the lead developers of the famous Soyuz spacecraft. If you haven't heard of Soyuz, where have you been living? In all seriousness, this spacecraft is one of, if not the most successful spacecraft design in history, without which, by the way, we probably wouldn't have a crew on the ISS, or an ISS for that matter. But that's not all this company is known for. They also built the first ever satellite, Sputnik 1, parts of the first space station, Salyut, space probes that went to Venus and Mars, and the list goes on. I'm not kidding, the things these guys designed and built is huge and absolutely amazing. To this day, Energia is the largest space company in Russia and one of the largest and most respected in the world. Speaking of space, Podmoskovye has something else that's just as important as Energia, the RKA Mission Control Center. As the name suggests, this is the control center of Russia's space agency, Roscosmos. From here, as many as 20 different spacecrafts can be provided with flight control simultaneously. Their main activity right now is dedicated to the ISS, but in the past, the Russian space stations Mir and Salyut were also directed from here, and the vast majority of all the Russian missions that took place since the 1960s. The RKA Mission Control Center is located right near the Energia plant, so you could say that the city of Korolev is the grand central stations for all Russian spacecraft. While the city of Moscow succeeds in taking the spotlight in this region, the Oblast of Moscow also has plenty of sights to see and things to do. There are many recreational and therapeutic facilities all over the oblast, and almost half of it is covered by forests, which is probably a blessing for many city dwellers. That's possibly why there are over 1 million dachas in Podmoskovye, which are small cottages owned by city folks that act as a second home, most with their own individual gardens. As a visitor of Podmoskovye, you can seek out the countless historical manors and towns, the jaw-droppingly gorgeous monasteries, and the many museums, theaters, and displays of traditional art and crafts. In all, there are over 6,400 cultural heritage sites in Podmoskovye, so you have every reason in the world to go out and explore this province. One of the first things that come to mind when thinking about Moscow is its Kremlin, but the capital isn't the only one that has one of those. In fact, there are many Kremlins spread throughout the country. Kremlin, by the way, is the Russian word for fortress. And one of the most famous Russian fortresses is the one in the city of Kolomna. This construction was built in the early 1500s, and it was one of the largest and most powerful fortresses of its time. The Kolomna Kremlin kinda resembles the one in Moscow, which is not surprising since both were built by the same architect, Aloisio da Milano. This fortress has seen a lot of history and a lot of battles, so legends and stories about it are in no shortage. Which is great, because the Kremlin is open for visitation, so you get your chance to discover them all. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Leave your comments downstairs, and don't forget there's a Patreon page where you can support this channel. I hope to see you next time. Bye.